The oxygen concentrator hummed quietly beside my bed as I struggled to find the courage for the words that would change everything my family believed about me. My weathered hands trembled as I reached for my wife Linda's fingers and through the nasal cannula, delivering what little breath I had left. I whispered the confession that would shatter 4 decades of carefully constructed lies. There's something I need to tell you all. Something about who I really am that I've hidden my entire adult life. But let me tell you the truth I've been suffocating under for 40 years, here in our home in Phoenix, Arizona. The afternoon sun streams through our bedroom window, illuminating the family photos that line our dresser. Pictures of what everyone believes was a perfect traditional marriage and loving family. My wife Linda sits beside me in the rocking chair she's barely left for the past 2 weeks, her eyes already red from the tears she's been shedding since my lung cancer diagnosis. My daughter Rebecca stands by the window, her arms crossed protectively as she tries to process what the hospice nurse just told us about my final days. My son Michael paces near the doorway, his face a mixture of grief and the desperate hope that maybe the doctors are wrong about my prognosis. The morphine dripping through my IV port helps with the physical pain radiating through my chest and bones. But there's no medication strong enough to ease the emotional agony I've carried every single day for 4 decades. The photographs surrounding me show a life that looks perfect from the outside. Wedding pictures, family vacations, graduations, grandchildren's birthday parties. But every single image represents another day I spent living as someone I'm not, loving people who never got to know the real me. Before I share this life-changing confession that will rewrite everything my family thinks they know about their husband, father, and grandfather, I really want to know where you're watching me from. Tell me in the comments what state you're from, and if you can, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because what I'm about to reveal touches on something that millions of people struggle with: the devastating cost of living your entire life as someone you're not to meet other people's expectations. My name is Robert James Sullivan, and I'm 67 years old. For the past 40 years, I've been married to Linda Marie Sullivan, the woman who everyone believes is the love of my life. We have 2 children, Rebecca, who's 38, and works as a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital, and Michael, who's 35, and teaches high school history here in Arizona. We have 4 grandchildren who call me Papa Bob and run to hug me every time they visit. From the outside, we look like the American dream, a stable, loving family that's been together through thick and thin. I've worked for 35 years as a mechanical engineer for Honeywell Aerospace, designing aircraft systems and earning a reputation as one of the most reliable and dedicated employees in my department. I coached Little League Baseball for 15 years when my kids were growing up. I served as a deacon at First Baptist Church of Phoenix for over 2 decades. I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity and helped build homes for low-income families every other Saturday for 20 years. But every single day of this life that everyone admires and respects has been a performance. Every kiss I've given Linda, every time I've told her I love her, every intimate moment we've shared, every Father's Day card I've received, every family gathering where people comment on what a wonderful husband and father I am, all of it has been built on the foundation of the biggest lie a person can live. Because I'm gay. I've always been gay, and I've spent 40 years pretending to be heterosexual, married to a woman I care about deeply, but have never been romantically or sexually attracted to, raising children who think they know their father, but have never met the real me. I've carried this secret since I was a teenager in the 1970s, when being gay in a conservative family in rural Iowa wasn't just unacceptable, it was unthinkable. Every single day for 4 decades, I've woken up and put on the costume of a straight man, performed the role of a loving husband, and slowly died inside from the weight of never being able to live authentically. What I'm about to confess will show you the devastating cost of living your entire life to meet other people's expectations instead of having the courage to be who you really are. It's about how I became a prisoner in my own life, trapped by fear, shame, and the desperate need to be accepted by my family and community. This crushing secret is literally killing me faster than the lung cancer spreading through my body. My oncologist, Dr. Maria Rodriguez at Banner MD Anderson Cancer Center, told me that the depression and emotional stress I've carried for decades has weakened my immune system and made it impossible for my body to fight this disease. She doesn't know that every labored breath I take is weighted down by 40 years of living a lie and pretending to be someone I'm not to avoid disappointing the people I love. It all started when I was 17 years old, during my senior year at Cedar Falls High School in Iowa. But before I tell you about the moment I first realized I was gay and made the devastating choice to hide it, I need you to understand how impossible it felt to be authentic in 1974, how different the world was, and how that fear shaped every decision I made for the next 4 decades. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the youngest of 3 boys in a deeply religious Lutheran family. My father, Robert Sullivan Sr., was a machinist at John Deere, and my mother, Dorothy Sullivan, was a homemaker who dedicated her life to raising her sons to be good Christian men. We attended church 3 times a week, Sunday morning service, Sunday evening service, and Wednesday night prayer meeting. The Sullivan family was known throughout our small community as the kind of wholesome, God-fearing family that everyone respected. In 1974, being gay wasn't something that was discussed, acknowledged, or accepted in places like Cedar Falls, Iowa. There were no openly gay people in our town, no representation in media, no support groups or resources. The only time homosexuality was mentioned was in church sermons about sin and damnation, or in hushed conversations about those kinds of people who lived in big cities like Chicago or New York. I remember sitting in church when I was 16, listening to Pastor Hammond preach about the abomination of homosexuality and feeling like he was speaking directly to me, like he could see the thoughts and feelings I was desperately trying to suppress. I would pray every night for God to fix me, to make me normal, to help me be attracted to girls the way my older brothers were. But deep down, I knew I was different. While my classmates were talking about which girls they wanted to ask to prom, I found myself looking at the boys. While my friends were getting excited about the cheerleaders at football games, I was watching the players. I tried so hard to force myself to feel something for girls, but it was like trying to force myself to enjoy a food I was allergic to. The moment everything changed was March 15th, 1975, during the spring of my senior year. Our high school drama club was putting on a production of Our Town, and I had volunteered to help with set construction. I wasn't particularly interested in theater, but it gave me an excuse to spend time around the arts kids, who seemed more accepting and open-minded than the jocks and farmers' sons I usually hung around with. That's where I met David Chen, a junior who had transferred to our school from California when his father got a job at the University of Northern Iowa. David was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was intelligent, artistic, confident in a way that seemed almost foreign in our small Iowa town. He played piano, wrote poetry, and talked about books and ideas that none of my other friends had ever heard of. We started spending more and more time together, working on the set after school, and talking about everything: our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. David was planning to go to college in California and study literature. He talked about traveling to Europe, living in big cities, experiencing the world beyond small-town Iowa. For the first time in my life, I met someone who made me think there might be possibilities beyond the predetermined path that had been laid out for me. One evening in April, we were alone in the school auditorium, finishing painting a backdrop for the final scene. David was talking about a poem he'd read by Walt Whitman, and something about the way he spoke, the passion in his voice, the way he looked at me when he quoted the lines about celebrating the self. I felt something I'd never felt before. It wasn't just attraction, though that was certainly part of it. It was recognition. Like he was speaking a language I'd always known, but never heard anyone else speak. When he finished reciting the poem, there was this moment of complete silence. We were standing maybe 3 feet apart, paintbrushes in our hands, and I could see in his eyes that he felt the same thing I was feeling. Without saying a word, we moved closer to each other, and then David reached out and touched my face. "I think I understand you, Robert," he said quietly. "I think we're more alike than either of us has been able to say." We kissed. It was my first real kiss, the first time I'd ever felt genuine romantic and physical attraction to another person. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but in those 30 seconds, I felt more authentic and alive than I had in my entire 17 years of life. When we pulled apart, I was terrified. Not of David, not of what we'd just shared, but of what it meant, because in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I was gay, and I knew with equal certainty that being gay in Cedar Falls, Iowa, in 1975, meant I would lose everything. My family, my community, my future, my sense of belonging anywhere. David could see the panic in my eyes. "It's okay," he said. "We don't have to tell anyone. We don't have to change anything. But at least now we know we're not alone." But I couldn't handle it. The next day, I told David that what had happened was a mistake, that I wasn't that way, that we should just forget about it and go back to being friends. I could see how much I hurt him, but I was too afraid to care about anyone's pain, except my own fear of being discovered. 2 weeks later, David's family moved back to California. His father had decided the job in Iowa wasn't working out. David left without saying goodbye to me, but he did leave a note in my locker that I still have to this day, 49 years later. It said, "I hope someday you find the courage to be who you really are. The world needs authentic people, not perfect performances." I threw that note away immediately, terrified that someone would find it and figure out what it meant. But I've thought about those words every single day since 1975. I've regretted throwing away that note, and I've regretted throwing away the chance to explore who I really was with someone who understood me. Instead, I doubled down on performing heterosexuality. I started dating girls aggressively, forcing myself through relationships that felt like elaborate acting exercises. I joined the football team my senior year, even though I hated sports. I talked constantly about girls and sex in the locker room, overcompensating to make sure no one suspected the truth. When I graduated high school, I went to Iowa State University to study engineering, partly because it was a practical masculine field that would please my father, and partly because I hoped that getting away from home would somehow make me different. But college just gave me a bigger stage to perform on. I dated several girls during my 4 years at Iowa State, always choosing women who were nice and appropriate, but who I felt no genuine attraction to. I told myself that love would grow over time, that physical attraction wasn't as important as compatibility and shared values. I convinced myself that maybe I just had a lower sex drive than other men, that maybe not everyone felt the intense attraction that movies and books made such a big deal about. During my junior year, I met Linda Thompson at a campus Christian fellowship meeting. Linda was exactly the kind of woman my parents hoped I would marry. Pretty, sweet, religious, from a good family in Ames. She was studying elementary education and talked about wanting to be a mother and homemaker. She seemed content with traditional gender roles and had never questioned the path that had been laid out for her. Linda was perfect for the role I needed to fill. She was kind and uncomplicated, and she seemed genuinely happy with the version of myself that I presented to her. When I was with Linda, I could almost convince myself that I was normal, that I could build a satisfying life around companionship and shared goals rather than passion and authentic attraction. We dated for 2 years, and in 1979, during my senior year, I proposed to her. I remember the moment clearly. We were sitting on a bench by Lake Laverne on the Iowa State campus, and I got down on one knee with my grandmother's ring and asked her to marry me. Linda cried and said yes, and everyone was so happy for us. But all I felt was a sense of resignation, like I was closing a door that could never be opened again. We were married in June 1980 at First Lutheran Church in Ames, with over 200 guests celebrating what everyone called a perfect match. I stood at the altar in my rented tuxedo, watching Linda walk down the aisle in her white dress, and all I could think about was David Chen's note about having the courage to be who I really was. But it was too late. I was 23 years old, and I had already committed to living the rest of my life as someone I wasn't. Our honeymoon was a week in Colorado, and it was the first time Linda and I were physically intimate. It was also the first time I truly understood what I had condemned myself to. I had to close my eyes and imagine I was with a man to get through our wedding night, and I knew that this was going to be my reality for the rest of my marriage. Linda was a wonderful wife in every way that mattered to her and to everyone else. She was loving, supportive, patient, and completely devoted to our marriage and family. But I could never give her the kind of passionate love she deserved, because I was fundamentally not attracted to women. I performed the role of a loving husband, but it was always a performance. When Rebecca was born in 1985, I thought maybe becoming a father would change something in me, would give me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that would make up for the lack of authenticity in my marriage. And I did love being a father. I loved my children deeply and genuinely. But even the joy of parenthood couldn't fill the hole in my soul that came from never being able to be myself. Michael was born in 1988, and by then I had settled into a routine of emotional numbness. I threw myself into work, church activities, and community volunteering, staying busy enough that I didn't have time to think about what I was missing. I became known as a devoted family man, a pillar of the community, someone other men looked up to as an example of how to be a good husband and father. But every night, I lay in bed next to Linda, feeling like a fraud. Every time she told me she loved me, I felt guilty, because I knew I could never love her the way she loved me. Every family gathering where people commented on what a wonderful marriage we had felt like a knife in my chest. The worst part was watching Linda try so hard to make me happy, sensing that something was missing, but never being able to identify what it was. She would ask me if I was satisfied with our physical relationship, if there was anything she could do differently, if I was going through a phase of depression or stress. She blamed herself for my emotional distance, never realizing that the problem had nothing to do with her and everything to do with my fundamental inability to be attracted to women. If this story is breaking your heart, and you want to hear how this lifetime of deception finally ends, hit that subscribe button, because the next part will show you the devastating cost of living 40 years as someone you're not. In 1995, when the kids were 10 and 7, Linda suggested we go to marriage counseling because she could sense that I was pulling away emotionally. We spent 6 months with Dr. Patricia Martinez, a therapist in Phoenix, who specialized in helping couples reconnect. Linda talked openly about feeling like she was losing me, like I was going through the motions of being a husband without really being present. Dr. Martinez asked me directly if I was attracted to my wife, if I enjoyed our physical relationship, if I had ever been attracted to other women. I lied through every single session, telling her that I loved Linda deeply and was just going through a stressful period at work. But sitting in that therapist's office, hearing Linda talk about how much she loved me and wanted to save our marriage, I felt like the worst person alive. The therapy helped Linda feel like we were working on our relationship, but it didn't change anything fundamental about who I was or what I was capable of feeling. I just got better at performing the role of a loving husband who was committed to making his marriage work. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, I watched the world slowly change around me. Gay people started becoming more visible in media and politics. I watched Ellen DeGeneres come out on television and get canceled, then slowly become accepted again. I saw gay marriage become legal in some states, then eventually nationwide. I watched my own children grow up with much more accepting attitudes toward LGBTQ+ people than I had ever been allowed to have. Rebecca brought home friends in high school who were openly gay, and she talked about how normal and accepted it was in her generation. Michael wrote papers in college about LGBTQ+ rights and marriage equality. My own children were growing up in a world where being gay was not only acceptable, but celebrated, and I felt like I had missed my chance to be part of that world by 40 years. In 2010, when Rebecca was 25, she brought home her girlfriend Sarah to meet the family. Rebecca had been dating women for several years, and Linda and I had both been completely supportive. I remember sitting at our dinner table, watching my daughter hold hands with the woman she loved, talking openly about their relationship and their plans for the future, and feeling simultaneously proud of her courage and devastated by my own cowardice. That night, after Rebecca and Sarah left, Linda said to me, "I'm so proud of Rebecca for being brave enough to live authentically. I think it must be so hard to hide who you really are." She had no idea she was describing my entire adult life. Over the next several years, I started having what I can only describe as a midlife crisis. But it wasn't about wanting a sports car or a younger woman. It was about the growing realization that I had wasted my entire life living as someone I wasn't, and that I was running out of time to ever experience authentic love and attraction. I started going to gay bars in Phoenix when I was supposed to be working late or attending church committee meetings. I never acted on anything. I was too afraid and too committed to maintaining my marriage. But I needed to be around people who were like me, who understood something about me that my family never could. Sitting in those bars, watching men my age who had found the courage to come out later in life, who had ended marriages and started over, I felt both envious and guilty. I envied their freedom and authenticity, but I felt guilty for wanting something that would devastate Linda and potentially alienate my children. I considered coming out several times over the years. When gay marriage became legal nationwide in 2015, I thought about telling Linda the truth and asking for a divorce so we could both find authentic love. When my grandson asked me what I thought about gay people in 2018, I almost told him that his grandfather was one of them. When Rebecca got married to Sarah in 2019, I sat in the front row, watching my daughter experience the kind of authentic love I had never allowed myself to have. And I almost stood up during the reception and confessed everything. But I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting Linda from heartbreak, protecting my children from having their understanding of their family shattered, protecting my grandchildren from the confusion of learning that their grandfather wasn't who they thought he was. But really, I was protecting myself from the consequences of 40 years of lies. 2 years ago, when I was diagnosed with lung cancer, my first thought wasn't about treatment options or how much time I had left. My first thought was that I was going to die having never lived one authentic day of my adult life, having never experienced the kind of love and attraction that straight people take for granted, having never had the courage to be honest about who I really was. I've spent the last 2 years in and out of hospitals, undergoing chemotherapy and radiation that haven't worked, watching my body slowly shut down while my family rallies around me with love and support. Linda has been by my side every step of the way, holding my hand during treatments, researching experimental therapies, refusing to give up hope even when the doctors have made it clear that there's nothing more they can do. Yesterday, Dr. Rodriguez told us that I have maybe a week left, possibly less. The cancer has spread to my brain and liver, and my body is shutting down. Linda cried when she delivered the news, and Rebecca and Michael held each other and tried to be strong for their mother. They've all been talking about how much they love me and how grateful they are for the life we've built together as a family. But I can't die with this lie. They deserve to know who I really am, even if it's 40 years too late. Linda deserves to understand why I was never able to love her the way she deserved to be loved. My children deserve to know their real father, not the performance I've been giving them their entire lives. An hour ago, I asked Linda, Rebecca, and Michael to come into the bedroom because I had something important to tell them. They're probably expecting me to share final wishes about my funeral or give them some beautiful last words about our life together. They have no idea that I'm about to tell them something that will rewrite everything they believe about our family and about me. Linda is sitting beside my bed now, holding my hand the way she has through every difficult moment of the past 2 years. Her eyes are red from crying, but she's trying to be strong for me in what she thinks are my final days. She's been telling me about all the wonderful memories we've shared, about how grateful she is that God brought us together, about how our love has been the foundation of everything good in our family. Rebecca is standing by the window, looking out at the desert landscape we've called home for the past 30 years. She's been my little girl, then my strong daughter, and now she's a woman who found the courage to live authentically in a way I never could. Michael is sitting in the chair across from my bed, the same chair where I used to read him bedtime stories when he was little. He's become a teacher himself, inspiring young people to think critically and compassionately about the world. "Dad," Rebecca says, reaching for my other hand, "whatever you want to tell us, we're ready to listen. We love you no matter what." I look at these 3 people who have been my whole world for 40 years, and I know that what I'm about to tell them will change everything they believe about their husband, father, and the family we've built together. But I also know that I can't go to my grave having never told them who I really am. There's something about me that I've hidden from you for our entire marriage, our entire family life. I begin, my voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. Something about who I really am that I've been too afraid to tell you. Linda's grip on my hand tightens, and I can see confusion and worry in her eyes. "What do you mean, honey? What could you possibly need to tell us now?" I take the deepest breath my failing lungs can manage and say the words I should have had the courage to say 40 years ago. I'm gay. I've always been gay. I married you, Linda, because I thought I could force myself to be different, but I've spent our entire marriage pretending to be someone I'm not. I love you all deeply, but I've never been the man you thought I was. The silence that follows feels like it lasts forever. Linda's hand goes limp in mine. Rebecca's face goes completely white. Michael stands up and walks to the window, his back to all of us. "What are you saying?" Linda whispers, her voice breaking. "Are you saying that our entire marriage has been a lie?" "Not a lie," I struggle to explain. "I do love you, Linda. I love our family. But I was never able to love you the way a husband should love his wife, because I'm attracted to men, not women. I've spent 40 years trying to be the man you needed me to be, but I was never authentic about who I really was." Rebecca is crying now, not from sadness, but from something that looks like grief, mixed with understanding. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell us? Why did you think you had to hide this?" "Because when I was young, being gay meant losing everything," I tell her. "I was too afraid to risk losing my family, my community, my place in the world. But I realize now that by hiding who I was, I robbed all of us of the chance to really know each other." Michael turns around from the window, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I need you to know that if you had told us, it wouldn't have changed how much we love you. But I also need to understand how this affects everything I thought I knew about our family." Linda is sobbing now, and I can see that she's processing 40 years of marriage through this new lens. "Did you ever love me at all?" she asks. "Was any of it real?" "I loved you in every way I was capable of," I tell her truthfully. "You've been my best friend, my partner, the mother of my children. But I was never able to give you the romantic love you deserved, because that part of me was always oriented toward men." The heart monitor beside my bed starts beeping rapidly as my pulse increases from the emotional stress of finally telling the truth. Linda pulls her hand away from mine and walks to the other side of the room, trying to process what I've just told her. 40 years, she says quietly. 40 years of wondering why you seemed distant, why our physical relationship always felt like something you were going through the motions of. 40 years of thinking there was something wrong with me. There was never anything wrong with you, I tell her urgently, knowing I don't have much time left. You were a perfect wife. The problem was that I was living as someone I wasn't, and that made it impossible for me to be the husband you deserved. Rebecca comes back to my bedside and takes my hand again. "Dad, I wish you had felt safe enough to tell us sooner. I wish you could have lived authentically instead of carrying this burden alone for so long." "I wish that too," I whisper. "I wasted my entire adult life being afraid instead of being honest. I hope you'll remember this when you're faced with choices about whether to live authentically or to live according to other people's expectations." The oxygen mask is fogging up more heavily now as my breathing becomes more labored. I can feel my strength leaving me, and I know I don't have much time left to make things right. "I'm sorry," I tell them all. "I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for not being brave enough to be honest. And I'm sorry for robbing all of us of the chance to know each other authentically." Linda looks at me one last time, and I can see that the woman who has loved me for 40 years is trying to reconcile the man she thought she married with the truth I've just revealed. "I need time to process this," she says quietly. "But I want you to know that even though everything feels different now, I don't regret our life together. We have beautiful children and grandchildren, and that part was real. As my vision starts to blur and my breathing becomes more difficult, I realize that Linda is giving me a gift, forgiveness that I probably don't deserve, and the acknowledgement that even though our marriage was built on my inability to be authentic, it still produced something beautiful and worthwhile. The last thing I see before losing consciousness is Rebecca holding one of my hands and Michael holding the other, and I know that even though my confession has changed everything they thought they knew about their father, they're still here with me as I take my final breaths. I die knowing that for the first time in 40 years, the people I love most in the world finally know who I really am.